Hello, and welcome to the end of week one of the Intro to Web Dev, Intro to Creative Web Dev course. During this first week, so far, what you've done is kind of get your stuff set up, get your coding environment set up, and you learned about calling functions in P5.js by using the reference and looking up the arguments or parameters that a function needs, and then using that to draw stuff to the screen. So to practice that, the next step is to come up with a project. And the project is kind of up to you. I am going to leave a ton of room for creativity like throughout the course. So I encourage you to, draw something that's kind of interesting to you. It can be like a selfie or a picture of your pet or your favorite food or an emoji or like a scene from a movie or just like a cool design. Really, any of the above is totally cool. And I'll be looking for at least 10 function calls. But what you do with those 10 function calls is totally up to you. So, do with that what you will. I will say that if you are sort of looking for some inspiration, you might want to check out the examples section of happycoding.io. I put a bunch of stuff up there over the last year or so. So check out the P5.js examples section, and here this calling functions section has a few examples of the different kinds of things you might think about doing. I'm not saying that you should take this code and claim it as your own, but maybe it'll help you sort of unlock some of those sort of creative juices. Gross. So there's a bunch of different things you can do. You can play with color or make a design or make something kind of seasonal. I think I made those during Halloween last year. Or you can just make something kind of cute and goofy. That's fun too. But you'll see that the code is, exactly what you've seen so far. It's calling functions and passing in parameters to accomplish some goal. A lot of these examples also have their own videos. So if you want to sort of, see the process of coding, then you can check those out as well. But totally optional. If you want to check these out for inspiration, that's cool. If you already have an idea, that's also cool. So in this video, I'm going to kind of just walk through what I would do if I were you. I'll sort of give myself a little project and just kind of code it up. And so, again, I'm not saying that you should take the code that I'm about to write and use that as your end project, but maybe this will help you sort of see the process that I would follow. Cool, let's dive in. So what I'll start with is opening up the P5 editor, and if you don't remember that off the top of your head, you can just type p5.js into a search engine, go to the p5.js homepage, and then over here on the left, there's a link for the editor. While I'm here, I'll also maybe highlight the reference page here. So I'm going to open that up in a new tab, actually, so that I have it, and then I'm going to open up the editor. So before you get started, before you go much further, one thing that I will suggest is logging in if you haven't already. So let me open this up in like an incognito tab so that I'm not logged in, so you see what that looks like. So yeah, this is probably what you'll see if you haven't logged in before. And click this like sign up button and register for an account, or log in with Google or whatever you want to do. It's all good. So that you can save your code, because that's what you'll actually submit in the end. So I'm going to close this out and go back to my window where I am logged in. So when you're logged in, you should see like your name in the upper right corner. You can also maybe rename your sketch. This is totally optional. They give you a random title, which is just 2 random words, which is sometimes a little silly. So maybe what I'll do is call this like, like week 1 sketch. You can name it whatever you want. Or you can just keep the random name. Doesn't really matter. But just make sure you're logged in and that you can save your sketch before you go much further, because I don't want you to write a bunch of code and then lose it. That would be very sad. Cool. So here we are in the editor, and I'm not going to talk in much detail about like exactly what's happening, because that's what the other video was for. But I'm going to run this code, and I see that I've started with my canvas. Maybe what I would do first is maybe resize my canvas, get this to a size that kind of matches my window size, or matches the end goal that I have. Feel free to play around with this. So if you want maybe one that's like really wide, that's totally cool. It doesn't have to be square. Or if you want one that's really tall, that's cool too. Don't be afraid to sort of make this your own. So maybe I will make a tall one, just maybe just for fun. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. I'm going to kind of model this, and sometimes it doesn't work, and that's okay. Okay, so the first thing I might do, well, first off, what I'll do is give myself a goal. And you can just kind of start by playing around and drawing random stuff, and that often is fun. But for me, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that I'm going to draw a flower. And I'm going to do that because it's one of my go-to drawings, because I can do it with like 5 circles and a line. And it's just one of those goofy, like, I don't know, kind of doodles that I kind of gravitate towards because I am not a real artist. So what I might do is, first off, give myself some white space, and I will start calling functions. And so if I don't remember off the top of my head which functions are available to me, I'll check out the reference as a bit of a reminder, and I'll kind of read through this. And I'll especially recommend this section here, the 2D primitives. I think these functions will get you pretty far, at least for the next couple weeks or so. So I think I'm going to use circle, and again, I can kind of read through this and remind myself that, oh yeah, the parameters it takes are x, y, and a diameter, a size, and oh right, the syntax is I call the circle function by typing its name, and then in parentheses, I have 3 numbers that are separated by commas. So I'll try that, and I'll just say circle, and just to get something working, I'll kind of choose random numbers. Maybe I'll choose like an x of 100, maybe a y of 200, and a size of, I don't know, 150. And then closing parenthesis, and then a semicolon. And okay, I've got a circle. That's cool. I think I want it more towards the center though, and maybe that's fine actually where it is vertically, but we'll see. But so if I want it in the center horizontally, I want to move it a little bit to the right. And over time you'll kind of get a knack for some of the logic here. But what I might do is just increase it and see what it looks like. So I'm going to go from 100 to 200. And 200 now is a little too far to the right, so maybe I'll cut it right in the middle of those 2 numbers and say 150. And that'll work. That's now in the center, sort of horizontally, like left and right. And the reason for this is I know that my canvas is 300 pixels wide, and the circle function measures the x coordinate. This number is like the center of the circle. So if I say that the center of the circle is halfway between like 0 and 300, then it'll be halfway across the canvas. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well. So honestly, I think playing around with the numbers will honestly get you pretty far. Now that I'm looking at this, I might decrease the size a little bit just to give myself some breathing room. And yeah, okay, we'll see. We'll see how I feel. But that's a reasonable start. And one thing that I will point out is notice like how often I'm running my code. I'm changing like one number at a time or one line at a time, and then testing it out and making sure that it works and checking my assumptions. And that's super, super important. Especially when you first start out, it can be really tempting to like write all of your code, blah, 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 and then hit run. And inevitably you'll get an error, and your drawing will not look like what you expected, and you'll cry because there will be just so many things to fix. Whereas if I do it one line at a time like this, it's much, much easier to sort of catch problems as they arise. Anyway, I'm going to maybe continue by drawing another circle. So in my case, I sort of have this kind of plan in my head ahead of time. Maybe I should have drawn it out on a piece of paper or something. But in my mind, a flower is like a center circle with like four circles kind of drawn sort of behind it. I have a piece of paper and a pencil here. I could try to draw this real quick. Bear with me. So maybe this is another thing that I might recommend doing is just getting out a piece of paper and a pencil and drawing it out for yourself to get an idea of what you want the screen to look like. Um, I will ask for your forgiveness in advance while I um, draw a terrible flower. I also don't know if you'll be able to see this, but we'll find out. So I don't know if you can see this, but this is the flower that I am sort of going for. Oh, wait, no, of course you can't see it because no, okay. Uh, it's going to be in the corner, I guess, right? So it'll be teeny tiny in the corner. If I was smart, I would have like scanned it in ahead of time. Maybe for the next video I'll do that, but whatever. So I have my beautiful flower drawing that I'm going to try to sort of codify. So I have my center circle, and now I want a circle that's sort of like to the left and above it. So to the left will be, and again, if I didn't know this ahead of time, I could probably just plug in some numbers and see what'll happen. So maybe I'll say 200, and with my Y, I'll say 150, and I'll make it the same size actually. So I just poked those kind of randomly, and I'll run it and see what happens. And okay, now I see that this circle, this new circle, showed up to the right of my first circle and above it. So um, I was trying to get it kind of to the left. So I think I actually need to change this number. So maybe I'll change this to 100 so that's on the other side of the 150, which is sort of this middle line here. And there we go. Okay, cool. That's getting closer. But there's one problem with it, which is that my new circle sort of draws on top of it. So if you take a look at like what I'm going for, again, I don't know if you can see that, but I wanted the sort of four circles to be behind my middle circle. So what I want to do is switch the order of them. I want to draw the middle circle sort of last. So this is the middle circle. And I could also maybe add a comment, and I'll do that by typing a line of code that has two slashes. And the computer will just kind of ignore that, but this will help me remember like which line of code does what. So middle circle. And I'll just kind of move that down so that it's last in my sketch. And let's run this and see what happens. And okay, now I have my middle circle sort of drawn last, which will make it be on top of all of my other circles. So I could add a comment here. Maybe this is the upper left circle. And again, that's just to remind myself of what I'm doing. Makes my code a little easier to read and makes it a little easier to think about. So next I want to draw my upper right circle, and I will do that by, again, calling the circle function and passing it some parameters that will put it over there. And actually, I already wrote this line of code earlier, so maybe I should have just kind of saved it, but I didn't think about it. So what I want to do is draw a circle that's to the right of both of these circles. So my upper left circle is at 100, my middle circle is at 150. So following that pattern, I'm going to kind of guess that my upper right circle needs to be at 200 because it'll move it 50 more pixels to the right. And the Y, I want it to be like in line with this first circle, so I'm going to keep that at 150, and I want to make it the same size. And I know I'm kind of throwing a lot of kind of random numbers at you, and I'm kind of used to like thinking in terms of the P5JS coordinate plane where 0, 0 is in the upper left corner. And so I know that if I want something in the middle, then my coordinate needs to be whatever my width or height is divided by 2. And so I'm kind of doing that in my head to get to the 150, which is the center circle here. And then I'm either subtracting from that number to move stuff to the left of center, or I'm adding stuff to that number to move a shape to be to the right. So that's how I got to this like 100 and this 200. I know that my 150 is the middle. So if I subtract from that 150, it'll be to the left. If I add to that 150, it'll be to the right. And we'll see something similar with the y values as well. But so I've got sort of half a flower. Let's kind of keep going. Maybe I'll draw the lower left circle next. And I'm going to call the circle function again. And now my x value is going to be the same as my upper left circle's x value, because I want it to be horizontally in the right place, in the same place as my upper left circle. But vertically, where is it going to be? So vertically, the y coordinate of these like top circles is 150. The y coordinate of my center circle is at 200. And so I'm going to kind of guess and say, with that pattern, this is 150, this is 200. So next, maybe I'll use 250 to kind of just even it out, and I'll use 100 to make it the same size, and I'll run it just to double check that that worked. And it did. Maybe I'll pause here and talk about something that will definitely be happening to you sort of by this point, and that is dealing with syntax errors. And so I've seen enough code to kind of not make these particular kinds of typos. Well, I do, but I haven't so far in this video. But I promise it's totally normal to do something like, let's see. So if I forgot my commas, for example. So if I called the circle function and then I gave it my 3 arguments, but I didn't separate them with commas. There's a few hints. So first off, you get this like red underline, and if you mouse over, you get this error message, expected closing parenthesis, and instead saw 250. So that's kind of a hint that something is wonky here. You also get this like highlight over here on the line number column, which is like a further indication that you should probably pay attention to that line. And so that's one indicator that like something is wonky with your code. If I try to run this, or if I didn't see that, if I didn't know to look for that, and I tried to run it again, you'll get this kind of more obvious thing yelling at you where it's an error message, syntax error, which means that there's an error like in the code that you typed, rather than like your logic. It's the actual code that you're trying to run, and missing closing parenthesis after argument list. And it also highlights that line of code in red. So I promise something like this will happen to you. And again, that's totally normal. I promise it's normal. It happens to every single one of us, every single coder. Every time they write down to write any code, they get error messages, I promise. And it's totally normal. It doesn't mean that you're bad at coding. It doesn't mean that you are not understanding or remembering something that everyone else is. I promise everyone is getting these same kinds of error messages. So when you do get them, the first thing to do is kind of just stare at the line of code and look for anything that kind of pops out at you. And that kind of thing gets a little bit more natural over time. So when you have sort of internalized the fact that parameters need to be separated by commas, when you see something like this where they're not, it'll kind of jump out at you a little bit more. But if it doesn't, then another thing I would do is maybe compare it to some other code that I know is working. I also might go to the reference and compare it to the example here. So I would kind of go back and forth between looking at other code that I know works, and maybe going back to the tutorial and kind of walking through the syntax that we would have learned there. And eventually you'll probably remember like, oh right, I need commas. Also, if you are still stuck, like after like, I don't know, 10 minutes or so of staring at an error message, if you are stuck, please reach out to me. Please hit me up on chat, or come to office hours, or send me an email. Chat's probably the easiest. It's the fastest. I'll try to get to you right away. But please reach out. Don't spend a day banging your head against an error message, because it's not worth it, and it's not really what I want you to be focusing on anyway. it's the kind of thing that I will definitely help get you unblocked on. But give it 5 or 10 minutes of kind of squinting at it, and if you still haven't seen it yet, or you haven't figured out exactly what syntax you need, hit me up, and I will absolutely help you. Okay. Anyway, so here we are. I fixed my error, and now I have what is almost a flower. We're getting there. I've got my upper left circle, my upper right circle. I just added my lower left circle, and now I'm going to finish it up with a lower right circle. And I think I actually have all of the parameters that I need already somewhere in my code. So let's start by typing out the function name and then a parenthesis. And so I want my lower right circle, I want the x value of my lower right circle to be in line with my upper right circle. And now I'm actually really glad that I added these comments, because I don't have to remember like, oh wait, which line of code is that again? This helps me just read it like as a human. So I know that this line of code is my upper right circle, and I see that the x value of that circle is 200. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that as my x value. And so here's another error, like just while I'm here. Another thing that will likely happen is you'll like call a function with the wrong parameters. And so we know ahead of time that circle needs x, y, and size, but let's say you forgot that, or you kind of typed it in and whatever you have you're trying to call the circle function with just a single number. And first I'll point out that it's not warning me ahead of time, because my syntax, the sort of like rules of like what characters are allowed to go where, my syntax is valid. It's more of a logic problem that you won't actually see until you run it, which is one of the reasons that it's so important to run your code so often, because the P5.js editor will not tell you about things like logic errors where you're calling a function with the wrong parameters or something. So you have to run it to be able to see the error message. So let's do that and see what happens. And so you get this error message down here. I actually thought it would be a little bit more obvious, but this is just kind of a hint that says circle was expecting at least 3 arguments but received only 1. And does it tell you the error message? Yeah, or the line number? Yeah, it does right here, line 18. So that tells me which line to look at, and this is another hint. It's also not drawing a circle kind of anywhere other than the ones that I've already drawn. So that's another hint. So if your code is like not drawing the thing that you thought it would, maybe check your console down here where the error messages will show up. So anyway, that's another kind of error message that you'll likely encounter, and again, totally normal. But let me keep trucking here. I am trying to draw my lower right circle, and I have my x value of 200 because I want it to line up with this rightmost circle, and I need a y value, and my y value needs to be the same as this bottom circle. So that lower left circle is what? That's 250. And then a size of 100, and again, because I'm just going to draw them all the same size. So I'm going to run that and see what happens. And yeah, I think that worked. So there's my flower. It's beautiful. It's not very colorful. The background is boring and gray, but I think it's a flower. So I'm going to check in with myself here, and I'm going to maybe just see my progress. And so in this project, I am going to be looking for 10 function calls, and you can do more than that if you want, but I'm not going to give you like a 15 out of 10 if you use 15 functions. So I'm just looking for 10. So in order to like get a 10 out of 10, what I'm going to do when I grade these is literally just count, and I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and I'm anticipating this question, but you can absolutely call the same function multiple times as long as you're giving it different parameters and it's kind of showing up in different places. Totally cool. Counts as separate function calls. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm actually already at 7. And so I only need 3 more, which is cool. So there's a couple options that I could play with. One is color. And the other one is maybe drawing a stem. So I think I'll probably go with color. So first, maybe I'll change my background color because that's super ugly. I don't like that. So I'll go to the reference and I'll look up background to sort of remind myself of how that works again. And I could give it a single number. I could make it darker or lighter between black and white, or I could give it like three values, and they're R, G, and B. And again, this is the kind of thing that if you've never played with like RGB values, it's probably not super intuitive, but over time you'll get a better sense of it. Um, but for now, what I'll do is maybe I'll just start out with like 000, totally black, just to see what happens. And yep, there it is. My background is now black. And now I can kind of play with it from here. So I can say, maybe I want it like fully green. So RGB, the G is all the way up to 255. So it's like kind of neon green. I don't know if I like that. So maybe I'll make it kind of bluer, RGB. So maybe I'll run this up to like, I don't know, 100. And that'll make it kind of like a lighter green. It's like a shamrocky. Maybe I'll make it a little red. I don't know. That'll kind of make it yellower, I think. And, I don't know. You could play with that. I could sit here probably for the next 1 hour playing with these three numbers, but that's probably not super useful. So instead, I'll just say, that's probably good enough. So that's, um, one way you might play with color. That didn't actually give me a new function to count for my to my score, but whatever. At least it's more beautiful. So another thing I might play with is the fill color of these colors, and I sort of gave that one away. But again, if you didn't know ahead of time how to change the color of the shapes, then come here to the reference and maybe read through this. I will say spoiler alert. I think the function we're looking for is fill, which is very similar to background in that it takes three numbers R, G, and B. So what I'll do is I'll say fill of R, maybe really R, maybe a little G, and maybe not very B. I think that'll give me orange. I think. Let's see. Close enough. uh, Fine. So now how many am I at? I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I want two more. So maybe I will change the fill color of the sort of outermost petals to be different than the sort of inner circle. So where's my middle circle? My middle circle's down here. And so maybe in right before I draw my middle circle, I'll draw a different color. Maybe I'll just make that all red, RGB. And I'll run that. And okay, now I have sort of a red inside part. If you are a biology major, please tell me what that word is. But whatever, it's a beautiful orange and red flower. And I think I'm at 9 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So one more. And okay, so maybe I will go with, there's two things I want to do actually. One is I want to draw like a stem kind of thing. So I will look for like maybe a line function or like there's a couple different options I could play with. So I'm going to check this like shape section out, and I don't know, I could use like a quad probably. I could use like some kind of weird rectangle. That might actually be good for leaves if I got that far, if I wanted to go above and beyond. Again, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but my original flower had some leaves down on the stem, so I might use that for a leaf shape. But for now, I think I'll stick with line. Yes, okay, line, and I'm in the reference and I'm reading through it to kind of familiarize myself with how it works. And it looks like it takes 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters. And here's some examples I can look through and a description. So read through that if you are curious. But what I'm sort of looking for is this syntax. So it's line x1, y1, x2, y2, and it tells me what those are. So it's 2 points, x, y, x, y. Okay, I think I can probably work with that. So maybe I will just kind of start out by drawing it kind of randomly. Maybe I'll say 100, 100 down to, I don't know, what's the size of my canvas again? 300. So maybe I'll take it to 250, 400. And I'm doing this just to get a line on the screen. I will move it in a second, but I just want to get something on the screen. Why did that get bigger? There it is. So I'm going to run that. And what do I see? Okay, I see my line. Okay, so I see where 100 is. It's up here. And I see where 250 400 is. That's down here. There's also some other issues with my line. It's kind of on top of my flower. I don't think that's what I want. And it's like really thin and black. But before I fix those things, I'm going to sort of fix the positioning of it first. So I think I want it to start like right in the middle of my flower, which I actually, well, there's a couple ways I could do this. I could start it in the middle here, or I could actually just start it down here. I think I'll start it in the middle, but then draw it behind everything, like move it up so that it's first. So if I want to put it in the middle, then my middle circle, I know that point, that's here, that's 150, 200. So I'm going to change that and like notice that that's the only thing I changed. And I'm going to save that and I'm going to run that. And I'm not trying to get my line looking perfect. I'm just moving the one point to make sure that it worked the way I expected. And if it didn't, say if I actually if I put this instead, I'd be able to try that out. And actually, that's not bad. So I might keep that. No, let me stick with my original idea. So actually, like here, I'm not trying this on purpose. I'm just tired. But yeah, this is wrong. So this is why I am testing it sort of really slowly, one line at a time, actually less than one line at a time, because it makes it a lot easier to go back and fix things as I go. So I'm going to run that again. And okay, now my line is in the center of my flower, and I think the Y is maybe okay. I think I like that 400, but I know that I need to move this 250, the sort of X coordinate of that second point. I need to move that over, and I want to move it over to match the X coordinate of that first line, or that first point in that line. So let me run that and see what happens. And okay, yeah, it's looking a little bit better. It looks kind of goofy with it kind of drawing on top of the flower. So I'll move that up now, and I'm moving that by hitting Control X on my keyboard, which cuts it, and then I'm going to paste it here. And maybe I'll add another comment that just says like stem or something. So now I expect the stem to be sort of behind my flower because I'm drawing it to the canvas first. And that's not bad. And I think I'm at 10 now. I'm at 10 function calls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Cool. And maybe I'll point out that I'm not counting these lines, function setup and function draw. We will talk about what those are doing in a couple weeks, but for now, honestly, just ignore them. But I'm not counting those as function calls. Only the ones that you write like this are function calls. But I'm at 10 right now, but I'm not super happy with the sort of outline. So what I'll do is I'll go to the reference and I'm looking to like change like, I don't know, the shape of or the size of the line that's drawn around the shapes. And, I know ahead of time what it is just because I've done this enough times and I've read through the reference. But if I didn't, I would maybe, read through some of these functions up here. Like the fill function set the inside color. So maybe something in here sets the outside color. You can also just go to a search engine and say like p5.js, make lines thicker. I don't know. I actually don't know if this is going to work. But let's see. Stack Overflow is usually pretty good. Let's see. Maybe not, but okay. So P5JS stroke function, what's that do? And this sort of meta process of like looking stuff up, using a search engine, reading through whatever you find, that's a huge part of writing code. You almost never know the code to write ahead of time. So this looks like it's changing like the color of it, and ooh, set the stroke width. So stroke width of 10. Let's see what that does. So I'm going to kind of copy this into my code and close out some of these tabs. And yeah, let's try that. Stroke weight of 10. And I'm going to save that and run it. And oh, okay. That's not bad. It's maybe a little too thick. Maybe I'll take it down to like 5. But I think I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's my beautiful flower. And now I have 11 function calls, which is really going above and beyond. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to stop kind of there, and hopefully that sort of helped you see like the process of starting from scratch and maybe drawing something on a piece of paper to kind of get your sketch down in like in the world, so that you can kind of look at it, compare and contrast. It can help to use like graph paper actually for P5. I should have maybe got some of that ahead of time. If you're not sure like exactly where the X and Y values lie, then using graph paper can really help you, because you can just straight up count the lines on the graph and be like, okay, if each of those is 10 pixels or whatever, then that needs to be at 150. But whatever. Drawing something out with a piece of paper and a pen first can help you sort of unlock what you want to do on the computer with code, and then from there kind of taking it apart and saying, okay, I think I need a circle up there, looking in the reference at the functions that P5 offers you, and then the parameters that those functions take, and honestly just kind of playing around. And so just calling circle, getting a circle on the screen, moving it until it's kind of where you want it to be, and repeating that process, fixing errors along the way, and maybe doing some searching and reading through the reference to find out how to do stuff like change the colors or make the lines thicker or thinner. So that's the process. At the end of this, hopefully you will have a sketch that has at least 10 function calls in it. And if you are logged into your P5 editor, then this URL is the one that you'll submit. And that's the one I'll be looking at to grade. One thing you might do just to kind of double check that it's saved and working is you can either like open up an incognito window where you won't be logged in and like paste that URL in, or you can send this URL to your friend and say, hey, can you check that this is working for me, run this code, and double check that what they see is more or less what you see. And it's just kind of fun to be able to share your creations with the world that way. Cool. And the last thing I'll mention is, like I said towards the middle of this video, you will get errors when you write code, and that is totally, totally, totally normal. I promise. That maybe won't make it feel any less frustrating, but like, please know that it doesn't mean that you're missing something. It doesn't mean that you are not good at coding. It doesn't mean that there's something in the class that you were supposed to understand but didn't. Getting errors and fighting with the coordinate system is normal, especially during your first couple of weeks of coding. Yeah, I promise that it's normal. So with that, when you encounter those errors, I'd say give yourself like 5 minutes of kind of squinting at it. But if it's taking more than that, then post a message in the chat, and either I'll answer it, or very likely another student will very likely have seen that exact same error message and will be able to help you out as well. So please don't spend a day just staring at the same error message, because that's not good for anybody. Please reach out, and we'll get you unstuck. Cool. That's my flower. I really look forward to seeing what you create, and I look forward to seeing you in class. So have fun, and happy coding.